Hey, folks, happy Tuesday to you. I am in a undisclosed location today doing some undisclosed things, all for the good of the order, the good of democracy, and the good of you, our viewing audience. Wanted to welcome everybody tonight. Tara is off. She is taking a much-needed quick break. She will be back with us on Thursday, where we will continue our usual hijinks, frivolity, and lighthearted fuckery. I hope that all of you have had a terrific weekend. We've got a few things going on here tonight. There's a lot of stuff in the news. I want to get to as much of it as we can. A little bit later in the show, I'll be bringing in my good friend Stuart Stevens, who is a brilliant observer of the American political scene for a very long time and one of my good friends. So with that, I just want to start out with Matt Gaetz, because there's a technical term in American political science you may have heard. He's an asshole. Now, Matt put on a big show this weekend at the Turning Point USA Teen Youth Bund rally for the Trump Jugend. But, you know, it turned out that Matt decided he was going to deliberately stir some controversy and to outrage a lot of people on the left, the right, and the center by insulting women, which you're not surprised by, I'm sure. But I want to say, the thing about Matt Gaetz is he's credibly accused of allegedly paying for teenage prostitutes, allegedly, with Venmo, allegedly. And by allegedly, I mean he's under investigation for all those things. So he really doesn't have a whole lot of room to talk about what kind of women, what women do with their bodies and what their business is with their own bodies. So I want to point that out. We're going to show you a little something about how we responded at the Lincoln Project to Matt at the end of the show tonight. I hope you'll stay tuned for it because it's quite a lot of fun, and it has caused the heads to explode among the usual suspects in right-wing world. So the second thing I want to talk about that I think is a pretty big story today is that the Pence crew, including Mark Short, his former chief of staff, are fully cooperating now with the grand jury and the 1-6 committee. We're seeing more and more folks from that world talking to the 1-6 committee. And I wonder if it's because Trump tried to have them murdered. I mean, I wonder. It's a puzzler. It's a poser. It's a nutty proposition. And I don't yes, that's why they're doing it. Because as much as Mike Pence wants to be president, he's not going to be. There's no world, there's no universe in which Mike Pence ends up being president unless every other candidate in the world mistakenly, instead of going to the presidential debate, shows up to the Hungry Wolf Hour in a steel cage. It's not going to happen. But I think his people have finally realized that if they don't tell the story of the role Pence played, then he will go down in history as just a patsy for Trump that Trump tried to have murdered at the end. It's a fascinating sort of perspective, but his people are now cooperating in a probe that will lead to the Department of Justice being better able to make a case against Donald Trump. And I love that for us. I don't care about Mike Pence one way or the other. He's a weak man. He was a weak vice president. He's weak morally, politically, personally. And he was around for the entire party of the conspiracy of months and months and months ahead of time of saying, oh, you know, Donald's going to have the election's going to be stolen. He knew months ahead of time. His people knew before the 1-6 riot what was going on. They had knowledge of the plots to overthrow the election, and they did nothing. Now, look, do they want to get out of it now? Absolutely. Do I blame them on one level? Absolutely not. Are they still a bunch of dipshits? Yes, absolutely. So I just think that's a fascinating moment. You had Mike Pence and Donald Trump in D.C. today, both putting on some warm-up act shows for the 2024 election. And, I'm not convinced that Donald Trump hasn't lost quite a few steps, but he is still a formidable force inside that party. And he is still a formidable source of wrong information. Speaking of wrong information, as you know, it is Tuesday. And we're going to go, and on every Tuesday, we try to give you the one thing you truly love, and that is last week in the Republican Party.
I'm Ted Cruz, and my pronoun is kiss my ass.
No one cared. No one paid attention. No one was looking at what they were doing.
I certainly didn't. I was on crack.
Right. Well,
I also call myself a Christian nationalist, and that's not a bad word.
Nursing homes typically don't vote too much. You know, people are dying.
Well, every state must
must sanction and permit gay marriage. I think that decision was clearly wrong when it was decided.
And they will do things like woke math.
I have never been an escort for Senator Ted Cruz.
And so this House of the Dragon that flies the dragon banner, the Dracul, rule the planet.
Why is it that the women with the least likelihood of getting pregnant are the ones most worried about having abortions? Nobody wants to impregnate you if you look like a thumb.
Women exist.
Is it safe to say that based off of your comments, you're suggesting that these women at these abortion rallies are ugly and overweight?
Yes. We saved Merry Christmas, didn't we?
But the church is supposed to direct government.
You didn't leave the bucket. There's the camera. I'm looking at the lights. Hello. So anyway,
Follow the light, Mike. Follow the light.
Walls and wheels, I used to say, right?
Sissification of America.
Two things that always happen, a wall and a wheel.
First off, if I go to jail, I go to jail.
they've already begun injecting people with the time-delayed kill switches. They're already spraying us with nanotech. They're already putting it in all the food. The attack has begun. We are now being murdered.
What do you say to people who think that those comments are offensive?
Be offended.
You know, that is one of my favorite things that we do at the Lincoln Project, because every week they give us more and more, and the crazy gets hotter and hotter. And I will say this about Ted Cruz. The fact that his pronouns are kiss my ass, believe me, Ted, many of us share the same feeling when we think about you. In fact, all of us in probably everyone in America. I will also say, looping back for one moment on the fact that Trump is in DC, returning to the scene of the crime, if you will, this week. It is very close now. We're edging closer and closer. All the sources in Trump world, ours and everybody else's, are telling us he desperately wants to announce. He needs to juice his numbers. He needs to get his money running. He needs to do all the things he needs to do to maintain his lifestyle. Even though there are signs that the gentry Republicans are trying to dump this guy. You can see it with the coverage and the treatment of Ron DeSantis in the last few days. They're really trying to set up DeSantis as the safe exit ramp away from Trump for the party. And what they're missing is that DeSantis is yet to be tested. We'll talk about this more with Stuart in just a few minutes. But they're also missing the fact that Donald Trump still commands the fanatic loyalty of roughly 35% of the Republican Party. Try winning primaries if 35% are already in the bag. But good luck with that. Anyway, I think there's also a couple signs. Even Rupert Murdoch's paper, the New York Post, is dumping on Trump pretty heavily. It is a fascinating moment because it tells you two things. One, even Rupert has his limits. And two, the accretion of damage, especially from the 1-6 committee hearings, has caused Trump a lot of harm. It has harmed him politically. Doesn't mean he's not still the strongest force in the GOP, but it's definitely knocked the edge off, and it's opened up a lot of the audience for folks like us to be able to talk to again in the Bannon line, as we call it. If you haven't heard about that, we will talk more about it soon. In the meantime, I would like to bring in my friend Stuart Stevens. I'm gonna fake you guys out a little bit of TV stuff. We're in offices right next to each other at an undisclosed location. But technically speaking, we have to be in separate offices or else it sounds really terrible. So, Stuart, welcome to the breakdown. Thank you for joining me.
Good to be here, Rick.
All right. So let me ask you this. Let's lead off. I want to lead off with this question. You've got Trump and Ron DeSantis clearly as the sort of two dogs that the Republican Party is trying to figure out how to get them into position for 2024. What do you think the status of that is right now with DeSantis showing a lot more leg, Trump showing a lot more leg? Where do you think that's going to go in the next few weeks?
I think you nailed it that Trump has 35 or more percent. I think his support is going to be harder to budge. I think DeSantis is going to be softer. I think if one person runs, a bunch of people are going to run. You're not going to have a one-on-one DeSantis-Trump race. So if you look at, you go to Iowa, people forget you can win the Iowa caucus with 29,000 votes. There's not a lot of humans. Even Ted Cruz won. New Hampshire, you can win with 50,000 in a crowded field. Mm-hmm. You win Iowa, New Hampshire, you're going to be the nominee probably. So there is this weird little thing, unless you've been involved in presidential politics, focus on. You can get nominated for president of the United States with fewer votes than it takes to get elected to Congress, de facto. So you do Iowa, you do New Hampshire, you roll into South Carolina. I think Trump would do very well. I think Florida will be a non-event if DeSantis is in the field, because I think people will just say, okay, that'll be a pass. So I still would bet on Trump. He has yet to attack DeSantis. And Trump will do anything to win. If DeSantis is in his way, I think Trump will win.
Well, we're hearing from a lot of folks that DeSantis is getting very much closer to an announcement, getting ready to move his family to a bigger city in Florida, where there's a better airport, and to preparing all the team members and the staff to run. And I think Trump is probably well down the path of doing the same thing right now, of getting all the pieces in place for campaign 2 in the coming months or weeks. So I wanted to jump to one of our state races we're keeping an eye on, and that is Ohio with J.D. Vance. And folks, I don't know if you know this, but J.D. Vance has kind of fallen off the radar screen. Republicans are in a bit of a panic because he's kind of a disaster. And when he did pop up yesterday, he made the almost unbelievable statement that women who are in violent marriages should stay there and not get divorced, for the sake of the children and for the sake of the state of marriage in America. Stuart, that ad kind of writes itself, don't you think?
Yeah. J.D. Vance is in the unenviable position that everybody in the Republican Party pretty much hates him, and they all want him to lose. The other candidates want him to lose. He's made no effort, after a divisive primary like they had. Right. The thing to do would be go hug on the other guys, try to get, and women in this case, and try to get them together, show how much you need them. This guy just disappeared. I have no idea where he is, probably in Peter Thiel's mansion or something. So everybody in the Republican Party would like this guy to lose, so he simply goes away. Right. They don't want to have to deal with this guy as a senator. And that's a terrific advantage. The Republican Party is a pretty active force as an organization in Ohio. I worked a lot there. I did Senator races. It has always been sort of oddly divided between a Kasich and a non-Kasich split. Portman was able to hold that together because he really didn't have any rivalry with Kasich. But I really think this thing is setting up that Ryan has a very, very good shot.
I think that's right. I think Ohio, as red as Ohio has been lately, I mean, J.D. Vance is setting the bar for terrible candidates. And, he spent a week out of the country in Israel. His fundraising is dried up completely, which I guess he's relying on Peter Thiel to sugar daddy him again for another tranche of super PAC money, but I don't know if that's coming or not.
I think the guy is really out of step. I thought it was very telling. He had this little boutique investment firm, and the one woman who was a partner in that firm, there are only 3 members, tweeted after the Roe v. Wade decision that she regretted it. A terrible day for America. I just think that there's a lot. I can't believe that his wife really is a woman who has multiple degrees, has an MPhil from Oxford. A professional woman who's working as a lawyer, and J.D. Vance is out there questioning women that work outside the home. Right. I would bet there's like a little tension at home that J.D. is dealing with.
I think that's probably right, Stuart. So moving on, I want to go back on the fact that Mark Short and Greg Jacob from Pence's office have all decided they're going to cooperate now with the grand jury and the 1-6 committee at a different level. What do you think of that? I mean, how do you think the cases are starting to shape up in terms of all this cooperation from these people? I'm not trying to give them any credit. I'm just trying to sort of figure out where the landscape looks after they spill their guts.
Well, look, I mean, you know how the party works. You know how the White House works. Of course, there's a conspiracy here. I mean, it goes to the very top. These senators who went out there, Hawley, you don't think their staffs were involved in coordinating this? I mean, of course they were. This is what people, I think, have to realize and are beginning to realize now, thanks to the committee. This is a conspiracy that involves all elements of the Republican Party. It involves the president. It involves members of the president's staff. It involves the RNC. It involves senators and congressmen and their staff members. It involves the Attorney General's Association, the people who are supposed to be the chief law enforcement. So look, I think that my view about Mike Pence is he's no hero. I think that he was aware of this conspiracy to overthrow the election. Instead of calling the FBI, he called Dan Quayle. I don't think you're calling Dan Quayle unless you are trying to maybe see if there's a way I can get out of this. I think he waited to see which way this was going to go and threw in with the winners. And it's nothing more glorious than that. I don't understand why Mark Short is a lawyer. He was aware of this, officer of the court. I don't understand why he didn't pick up the phone and call the FBI. I am aware of the fact that in the Oval Office, there are meetings to overthrow the peaceful transition of power. And it didn't happen. So I think it falls in the category, like you say, it's good that they're cooperating. I hope they're cooperating fully. But the fact that you didn't do a worse thing does not mean what you're doing now is particularly praiseworthy.
Right. The idea that they could have been worse and could have covered up or whatever doesn't make them heroes at this point. I think though that the Department of Justice is starting to send more signals. I mean, I heard this afternoon that Merrick Garland is now, for the second time in as many days, explicitly said Trump is not immune from prosecution, which I think is, for Merrick Garland, a pretty titanic symbol.
Yeah, I mean, is this not the greatest criminal conspiracy in the history of the country? They were trying to steal the country.
Yes.
Greater crime could there be?
It's impossible to imagine. I
mean, there's people in jail for like smoking dope. And this guy tried to overthrow the government of the United States, and there's not going to be any consequences. I think it would be a horrible sign to the entire legal structure if Trump was not prosecuted.
Yeah, I think that's right, Stuart. And I think there are a lot of people in the country who've been very frustrated by the sense of delay or hesitation to prosecute Trump. I'm still trying to do my best. I'm not the most optimistic guy in the team, but I'm still trying to do my best to believe that Merrick Garland has a plan and they're executing on that plan, and they're not going to worry about the political implications of this fall or anything else. Because if you don't punish these people, and not just Trump, but the rest of the coup plotters, I think the outcomes are terrible for this country. I mean, and just incredibly dangerous for this country.
Yeah, one of the attacks of authoritarians is at all the institutions of government. I mean, you've talked about it a lot on this show. And Trump attacked all elements of civil society. He attacked the election system. He attacked the justice system.
Mm-hmm.
He calls the FBI dirty cops. So I think you have a need to restore confidence in the Justice Department that, from what I've read of Merrick Garland, he's particularly conscious of. He's an institutionalist in a true sense of the word, not anyone like Mitch McConnell. And that sense that the Justice Department has to be above this. So the slowness of this process is, if it leads to some sort of indictment, I think that it will be considered a process that was carefully pursued.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that's where this ends up.
I hope so too, Stuart. I think it's a very, very dangerous spot we're in right now. We do have a breaking piece of news this afternoon from Maggie Haberman, where she has reviewed dozens of emails between the Trump campaign officers and lawyers, including one in which the lawyers described their slates of electors in the states as phony or fake. I mean, this is a totally unsurprising development in this, right, Stuart? I mean,
yeah, one of the realities of the Trump presidency, and there could be a benefit to this ultimately, is we realize how much of our democracy and civil society is based on goodwill.
Sure.
So, I was part of the Bush campaign in 2000, and there was talk then about replacing electors, kind of on both sides of it.
Mm-hmm.
It never went anywhere. There was just sort of an assumption that this is going to go the way it should go, even though the system is creaky and there may be a loophole here and a loophole there. But the fact that they actually went about this, and we should not forget that what is at the root of this? The root of this is disenfranchising non-white voters.
Right.
All of these illegal voters they talked about, in Atlanta, it's in Fulton County. They aren't looking at these rich suburbs of Buckhead.
Right.
They're in Detroit. There are all these mysterious votes, supposedly. So what is it?
Pennsylvania or Philadelphia. It's the part of the collar in Philadelphia.
Exactly. In the Philadelphia. So ultimately, this is about a group of powerful white people who look at America, see how it's changing. All the Stephen Millers in the world can't change that.
Right.
So the only way that they can hold on to power is to change who votes and how we go about this election. And that is what they are trying to do. And we should be completely open about this. It is about disenfranchising non-white voters who are less likely to vote Republican.
And Stuart, one of the things we always say at the Lincoln Project, and folks, I really want you to think about this. The 1-6, the visuals of the 1-6, it was an ugly little coup, an ugly little insurrection, an ugly little explosion of violence. But these folks are working so they don't have to do that again.
Exactly.
They'd rather just realign all the systems of voting, vote counting, and turnout and registration so that they don't have to do that again. So they can just declare Trump or whomever is the flavor of the day the winner. It's even more corrosive than the violence is in a strange way. It's even more dangerous for the country than the violence is in a strange way.
And this is the pattern. I mean, when you read these books by all these experts on fascism and authoritarianism that you've had on the show, this is what happens. This is how you become hungry. It is a process of building a legal rationale for doing what you want to do. So if it is legal for a Republican-dominated legislature to overturn the popular vote in a state, when they do it, you can't say it's illegal. It's legal.
Right.
And that is what this is about. And I think there is a great danger in looking at the buffoonish elements of this movement, that our friend Matt Gaetz, the Beauparts, the Marjorie Taylor Greene, and think this is a buffoonish movement. So what happens after the 1-6 coup fails? There in 47, I think it's correct states, legislation was introduced to change how people vote. That legislation didn't suddenly get drawn up after
No. Well ahead.
It's been well planned. These people are patient. They have all the elements that you need for an authoritarian movement to succeed. They have the backing now of a major party. They have a huge propaganda wing and Fox and its sort of ecosystem. They have financiers, and they're very serious. And I think what is difficult for a lot of us to realize is they think they're going to win. When I talk to people that are over, I still have friends that, they think they're going to win. And
I'm convinced of it.
And they will if we don't fight. Every time a democracy slips into something else and gets closer and closer to authoritarianism, it's because those who believed in democracy didn't think it could happen.
That's exactly right, Stuart. And folks, we are constantly trying to get folks involved with the union. jointheunion.us, which puts volunteers in touch with campaigns, candidates, and causes where they can devote their time and their skills, because this portal helps match people with specific skills to jobs that out there in campaigns that absolutely need people like that. It could be graphic artists or lawyers or door knockers. It's a whole spectrum of things. And that's one way people can get involved. The other way, folks, is if you share our content with folks around the country, it really does help get the message out. We have a powerful narrative setting ability. And as you can see, when we go out and we advocate for something, the right wing gets absolutely beside themselves. They lose their damn minds. I want to show you an ad we did this week that Stuart created, and it is about Joe Biden. I think, do we have that? Can we pull that ad up, folks?
He was elected overwhelmingly at a dark time. Years of chaos, hate, our politics used as a wedge to divide, not a common cause to unite. Democracy attacked. Joe Biden stepped forward as president for every American. These are difficult days. Years of pandemic, war in Europe driving world energy prices up, a radical Supreme Court majority, the Republican Party embracing autocracy, rejecting any positive change. There are no easy answers, no quick fixes. But in just 18 months, President Biden is making our lives better. A record 6.6 million jobs added in the first year. 600,000 manufacturing jobs. Unemployment at a historic low. Wages rising at a record pace. After years of Republican failure, President Biden is rebuilding America's infrastructure.
We've stared into the abyss of insurrection and autocracy.
Thousands of jobs, 90% no college degree needed.
And we, the people, did not flinch.
President Joe Biden.
It's never, ever, ever been a good bet to bet against America.
He's working for America.
And it still isn't.
That was a beautiful ad, Stuart.
You know, for the life of me, Rick, I don't understand why the Democratic Party isn't doing more of that. Biden has a real story to tell.
He does.
You know, there's never anything perfect in economy. I wish gas prices, it was
sure
a gallon. But you do have unemployment at historic lows. You have wages rising. You have manufacturing jobs on the increase. And there's a sense now that there is a functioning government. The problem the Democrats have is they still see themselves as a governing party. So they actually take this job seriously. And I say it's a problem because it stops them from going to these, crazy extremes that Republicans do in rhetoric. So, look, I would just say to everybody that looks at Biden's numbers, which are bad now at the moment, and thinks that he can't win. I mean, politics is a weird business. It was if Joe Biden is at this point, and Bill Clinton, George Bush was at 92% favorable a year before he lost to this obscure governor from Arkansas. Obama was at 38% in 2011. Don't give up on Biden. And I think that this could turn around. And ultimately, this is going to be a choice. Biden right now is running against God. Okay, how would God do things? All right, God probably wins that match. Biden versus Trump, Biden versus DeSantis is going to be an active choice. It's not going to be a referendum just on Joe Biden. And I think that's a race that he very well can win.
Yeah, and I think it's important for Democrats to remember, whenever they're sniping inside the Democratic Party, the Republicans can weaponize and exploit that in a period of time that you cannot imagine that brief an interval of time, because it's what we used to do. We would find your own wedges in your party and widen them and exploit them. Don't do their work for them, folks, is what I'm trying to say. Well, Stuart, I want to go ahead.
I was just going to say, there's a lot of talk about how Republicans are better at messaging than Democrats. But the thing that people forget is the Republican Party is a very homogeneous party. It is much easier to message to people who all share the same belief structures. It's like putting on a concert. It's a lot easier if you're only going to have only a jazz concert, only a rock concert. The Democratic Party, which is its great strength, is also its great challenge.
That's right.
Is more like America. So you have all these people that like all these different kinds of music, and you got a message to them. That's harder. It's a much more difficult challenge.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. Well, Stuart, thank you so much for joining me today. We're going to let you go. I'm going to wrap up the show here, and we will all go on our merry way. But Stuart, thank you so much for coming out, folks. I want to show you one more thing, and this is, and I want to set it up first for you a little bit. We mentioned Matt Gaetz at the top of the show because Matt is, as we've previously noted, an asshole, and he's an asshole on purpose. It's a deliberate performative act to drive outrage, to drive anger and sadness and hurt. A lot of people responded to this ad or this statement of Matt's with 2,000-word articles about the dangers of misogyny and mansplaining and all this other stuff. Guys, it's an act. So what do you do when somebody like this puts themselves out and wants you to be outraged? Don't be outraged. Just punch them where it hurts. And in Matt's case, I think you'll know where it hurts most after you see the ad, and then we'll wrap it up after that. I'll have a conversation with you. We'll go from there.
The women with the least likelihood of getting pregnant are the ones most worried about having abortions.
Matt, you seem like a guy that enjoys spending time with a woman. So why are you so angry at them?
Nobody Nobody wants to impregnate you if you look like a thumb.
I don't get it.
Are you mad because you have to pay for sex? Allegedly.
They're like 5'2", 350 pounds.
Man, stop.
It almost seems like you're trying to yell loud enough that no one will see you've been hiding something. What are you compensating for?
A few of them need to get up and march. Swing those arms. Get the blood pumping. Maybe mix in a salad.
But Matt, you don't have to yell that loudly. That secret you're so worried about people discovering, it's not big at all.
You know, dick jokes are an underappreciated element in American politics. But Matt's a dick, so he deserves the joke. Anyway, folks, I want to say thank you very much for all the support you give the Lincoln Project. Again, if you could share our content, you know, follow all the usual channels on LP. We are entering into the last 100 or so days of this campaign cycle. We are focused on a bunch of these key races. You're seeing our work coming out in key races around the country. And it is vitally important that we directly ask you, our donors, our friends, our supporters, for your help. If you go to lincolnproject.us/donate, anything helps. We are always grateful. We always put it immediately to work. You can do the QR code on the screen right now if you've got your phone out. And we are one of the few organizations in this country. We're not dependent on a corporation. We're not dependent on a political party. We're not dependent on a particular ideological group, whether it's left or right. What we are dependent on is the help of folks like you. So if you can support us, we'd be greatly appreciative. And we will put it to work immediately, and we will go out and kick the hell out of bad guys on your behalf. Thanks so much for joining us, and have a great evening. We'll see you again on Thursday.